With all the recession forecasts topping headlines, I decided to round up some of your biggest questions, including how to save, invest, and make smart money moves in these weird times. Before we answer your recession questions, let's quickly review what a recession is, right? We covered this more extensively in an earlier video, including why they happen, and you can check that out right below. But to recap, a recession is when the economy slows down for more than a few months, and how we measure economic growth is through GDP, which stands for Gross Domestic Product. GDP measures the value of all the goods and services produced within a country during a specific period, like a quarter or a year. And if the rate of GDP falls for at least 2 back-to-back quarters, then the country is technically in a recession. Now, you had a lot of questions about what to do with your money in the run-up to a possible recession and what to expect if the economy slows down. You want to know where to save, how to invest. Should you go ahead with that kitchen renovation? Let's dive in. First question, what typically happens to the economy in a recession, Farnoosh? What can we expect? Well, every recession is a little different in terms of length, severity, consequences, but typically we can expect layoffs or an increase in unemployment. We may see the market for credit become harder to access. Banks become more stringent and slower to lend out money because they're worried now that borrowers might default. And if the Federal Reserve continues to raise rates like they have been to bring down inflation, then we might see the cost to borrow go up. So even if you're lucky to get a loan, you're paying more to borrow that money. The silver lining is that prices on goods and services do typically fall in recessions, and savings rates go up, giving people more incentive to park cash in bank accounts. We may also see an uptick in entrepreneurship. The financial recession of 2008 gave rise to what was called necessity entrepreneurship. Airbnb, Uber, those companies were all started during that era. And as unemployment hit double-digit territory, workers then were desperate to make money. The average duration of unemployment was about 9 months at one point during the Great Recession, and many turned to small business and entrepreneurship as the quicker path to making money. Here's another question many of you are asking: should I stop investing right now? You know, it seems the stock market's been in a free fall for a while. You're wondering, better to just cut my losses and get out? Well, the short answer is no. Now, the caveat is if you are desperately in need of the money that you have in the stock market because you have an immediate emergency expense and there is no way to fund it, you've exhausted all of your resources, then fine, cash out if you have to. But don't cash out just because you can't stomach the volatility and watch the down arrows. My advice, change the channel. Stay invested, avoid making knee-jerk reactions. If you have a long-term investing horizon, stick with the plan. Historically, it pays to ride the market. Investors that cashed out their 401ks in that Great Recession missed out on a huge rebound. The S&P 500 has risen nearly 150% since the lows of 2009, and that is adjusted for inflation. So the tip is, as investors, just control what you can control, which is to stay diversified in your portfolio, make sure your investments are aligned with your risk tolerance, and avoid headlines that get your heart rate going. Now, beyond investing, a lot of you in the audience want to know if there's a way to recession-proof your finances. In other words, how to create a plan that won't get too shaken up by an economic downturn. Well, first understand that in recessions, cash is extremely vital. Having liquid savings in the bank is probably the most important aspect of a recession-proof financial plan. So to the best of your ability, starting now, commit to bulking up your emergency reserves if you feel like you don't have enough to cover you for at least a few months, if not longer, in case of a job loss. Now, whether that's bringing in some extra income through a side hustle or cutting back on your costs or both, this is the first step in creating a shield around your finances at any point in time, but especially during a recession. The other money move to make now before possibly heading into a recession is to lock in your interest rates and consolidate debt if it means paying a lower rate and streamlining those payments, which will make life easier. Like we reviewed, recessions usually lead to higher interest rates. If you have a variable rate, which means that it'll change on a loan or line of credit, try to refinance now and lock in that fixed rate so that you don't risk having to suddenly pay more for the same debt during a recession when rates adjust higher. Now, sticking with emergency reserves, if you've got savings and you've streamlined your debt, you've consolidated and you want to do more, my suggestion is to look into 0% APR credit cards. Not because you want to go shopping, but because just in case you have an expense and you want a low interest or no interest way of affording it and then paying it off quickly, a 0% APR card may be for you. Also, homeowners, if you've been sitting on a lot of equity, a lot of people are eyeing the HELOC market, home equity lines of credit, another relatively low interest way to borrow. So again, if you have an emergency, a big purchase, you don't want to take up your cash reserves, you can use a HELOC to help you make ends meet, but it's only for emergencies. Now, sticking with real estate, a lot of us are having our eyes on the housing market. Demand is still high. If you're wondering how a recession might impact your plans, your affordability, here's what I want you to know. 1, prepare to pay more interest. Rates will go up. They've already jumped compared to last year. So if you haven't adjusted to looking for homes with a lower asking price, this may be the time to do it. Or just prepare to pay more on a monthly basis and be comfortable with that monthly housing payment. Now, on the flip side, home prices may actually cool down because the increase in rates historically leads to a decrease in buyer demand. And third tip here, protect your credit score. Really, remember, banks typically get a little pickier during recessions and lending requirements can get more intense. The higher your credit score, the better likelihood of securing a mortgage and one with a competitive interest rate. And there you have it. Hopefully this helps answer some of your top recession concerns. We know that the questions will continue. Keep them coming. Leave us your thoughts below. And if you like this video, please like it and share and subscribe. For CNET Money, I'm Farnoosh Torabi.